A function can take an array as a parameter. Here is a function that takes an array of numbers and computes the sum of its elements. So here is the function sum. The first parameter is an array of integers. Notice that I do not specify the size of the array. I'm just saying integer nums, just a square bracket without specifying the size. The square bracket tells the compiler that nums is an array of integers. And I also need to give the size of the array, the capacity of the number of elements that I want to process. And the loop is very simple. The body of the sum function, integer answer is equal to 0. So starting from 0 to up until num elements, not including num elements, I'm just walking over the array or iterating over the elements of the array and adding each of them to the answer. And finally, I'm returning the answer. Here is the actual code. So integer sum, the first parameter is an array of integers. The second one is the number of elements that we would like to process. And here is some test code that makes calls to that sum function. So I'm declaring and initializing an array that has 6 numbers in it. I'm printing those numbers on the screen. Then I'm saying compute the sum of the first one element, which is 5. Then compute the sum of the first 2 elements, which is 7. Then compute the sum of the first 3 elements, which is 8 basically. And finally, I'm saying compute the sum of all 6 elements of the array. So let me first, maybe actually let me go step by step so that you see what gets printed at each with each function call. So here it is when we make a call to the function. Actually, we can go into the function, as you know, with F11. So if you go there, we're going to go step by step and print it. So that's now I'm pressing F10 so that I don't have to go into the function, but just execute and print the result. So 8, 11, 17, and 25. So basically, we can now, by changing the second parameter, giving the size of the array, we can compute the sum of the numbers from 0 to some range. We can actually change the function, rewrite this function so that we can compute the sum of the numbers between a start and an end index. So this is again a sum, but this time I am computing the sum of the numbers from start to end. So I'm giving 2 indices now, starting index and the ending index, and I'm computing the sum of the numbers from starting index to end index including. And here is how I'm going to make calls to this function. So basically this time I need to provide 2 parameters. Nums compute the sum of the indices from 1 to 3. So it would be 1, 2, and 3. This is from 2 to 5. This is from 0 to 4. So let's go to that example again. Here is that code. This is the second sum function. But the first index is now starting index. The end index is the ending index. And the for loop is now going from starting index to the ending index, including the end index, right? So basically both the start index and the end index must be valid indices, obviously, for this to work. And if you come here, now I'm going to continue the test code. So I would like to compute the sum of the numbers from 1 to 3, meaning the range of the numbers from 1 to 3, indices from 1 to 3, and that would be 6. So if you look at the numbers, so this is 1 to 3, and if you add them up, you're going to get 6. So let's continue from 2 to 5, that would be 18, and from 0 to 4, that would be 17. Okay, here are 3 more functions that take an array as an argument and process the array elements. This is a function to compute the minimum number within an array of elements, array of integers. So it's basically taking the first parameter is an array of integers, the second parameter is the number of elements that we would like to process. The idea is very simple. Assume that the first element of the array is the minimum, then walk over the remaining elements of the array from index 1 up until num elements, not including num elements, and just compare the current element, num xi, with the minimum. If the current element is smaller than the minimum we have seen so far, update the minimum. And maximum is the same, except that this time we are updating the maximum only if the current number, num I, is greater than the maximum seen so far. And finally, an average that basically first calls the sum function in here to compute the sum of the elements, and then divides it by num elements. So as you can see that a function can make a call to another function that has already been implemented. Again, these are all in example 7. So if we go there, so let me stop the debugging and go to the code. You can now see that minimum is very simple. This is the minimum function, this is the maximum function, and this is the average function. And as you can see, the average is basically making a call to the sum function to compute the sum of the elements from the first num elements, and then dividing it with the actual number of elements. As you can see, I'm doing a typecasting because I want the average to be a double number rather than an integer number. So let me run this thing so that you can see the actual testing code. So the minimum of these numbers is 1. As you can see, the minimum is 1. The maximum of these numbers is 8, which is stored at the last cell, and the average is 4.1666. It is important to know that arrays are passed to functions by reference. This means that if we change the elements of an array within a function, we will also be changing the values of the array in the calling environment. So here is a function, add5, that takes an array of integers, the size of the array, and then just adds 5 to each element of this array. When we make a call to this function, add5, from within main, passing this array as the argument to the function, after we return the function, we'll see that the values of the array in the calling environment, which is main, has changed. That they are now increased by 5 because we have added 5 to each element of the array. This is example 8. Let me go there. This is add5 function. As you can see, it takes an array of integers, the size of the array, and adds 5 to each element of the array. This is the array that I'm declaring within main, and I'm passing it to add5. So after I return from add5, you'll see that the values of each of the elements of the array has incremented by 5. So let me run this thing so that you see. So bottom line is, yeah, you can see that 5 has become 10, 2 has become 7, 1 has become 6, and 8 has become 13. So what I would like you to understand is that when you pass an array into a function, as soon as you make changes to the array, those changes are reflected to the argument that's being passed to the array, to the calling environment, right? So basically, arrays are passed by reference, not passed by value. If an argument is passed by value to a function, a copy is made. That's not the case with arrays. So that's what we have as far as passing our arrays as our parameters to functions. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comment section.